Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B Nature Virtual Event Space. Right now, we are going to help you get your nature photography game in check. Russell Graves joining us with some simple yet effective techniques for improving your nature photos. Russell, how's it going, man?
Good. How are you doing, Derek?
Good to have you on. I'm doing wonderful myself. Everything's good down there in the Lone Star State.
We've finally broken our big heat wave for the summer, and it's about 70 degrees outside and overcast, and we're expecting some rain, so things are perfect right now.
Oh, nice. I know last time we talked, it was don't go outside.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, it's rough for a long time, but it's better now.
Good, good. Well, we
Yeah.
have we're excited to have you on, Russ. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'll remind everybody if you guys do have any questions, Russ has offered to take them during, so do not wait until the end. If you guys have a question, throw it out there. And Russ, I'll see you in a bit for some Q&A.
All right, sounds good. Thanks. All right, welcome everybody. I trust that you can see the screen in front of you. Let me get all of my buttons and my screens in the right place so I can see everything. And yeah, like Derek was saying, and I'll remind you this a couple of times, through this presentation, I want this to be a dialogue and not a monologue. So if you have any questions as I go along, just feel free to add those in there and let me know if you have any questions. And questions can be about anything. Product recommendations, how I took a picture, what I was thinking when I took a picture. And Derek, I don't know if you can hear me or not. We should have done a disclaimer. I speak two languages, one really good, one not as well. The worst language I speak is English. And so if I say something in Texan that people don't understand, because I'm not really sure how far this audio goes, feel free to ask for a clarification.
I can't translate for you on that. I don't speak any Texan, so
I'm told sometimes I've got an accent. I don't hear it, but I'm told that I do. So yeah, if anyone has any questions or any clarifications, feel free to speak up. Again, welcome. Today's presentation is Simple Photo Hacks to Improve Your Photography. My name is Russell Graves. I'm coming to you live from Hackberry Farm near Dodge City, Texas. And I don't expect anyone in the audience to know where Dodge City is, but if you're looking at a map, it's northeast of Dallas near the Red River. Just almost in Oklahoma where I live. It's where I grew up. This farm had been in my family for a long time, and I'm the latest Graves to own it. And we've been living back here for just a few years now after we spent most of our adult life in the Texas Panhandle. Let me tell you a little bit about myself before we get going. I am a commercial and editorial photographer. If you don't know the difference between the two, I've done my fair share of commercial work for ad campaigns and other in-store signage for mainly in the outdoors and kind of rural travel industries, and also an active editorial photographer. I still love shooting magazine stories and telling stories through photographs. So that's really what drives a lot of my photographic sensibilities is my work as an editorial photographer. As part of that too, I'm also a magazine and a book writer. I've had several books published, but I still write a lot for a lot of magazines. In fact, when I'm done today, I've got to finish up a magazine story when we're finished. And so I love both the visual medium as well as the written word as well. One of the things I've been doing over the past 5 years has been doing more and more workshops. And I originally, to give you a little bit of background before we get into the meat of the presentation. I graduated college in 1993 with a degree in agricultural science. And so for 16 years, I taught agricultural science in a small high school in the Texas Panhandle. And so I left teaching in 2009, even though I had a wonderful career as a teacher and loved teaching and loved the whole aspect of education. I kind of got away for it for a while. Well, about 5 years ago, I started doing it again. And it was really a full circle moment for me that you could go out and share wonderful places in nature with like-minded people, and then teach them a little bit about photography. To me, that was a full circle moment. So since I've been leading workshops, I absolutely love it and love the experience and love getting to meet new people. One of the things I do is I'm a hobby farmer as well. Since I live on a farm, I might as well own a tractor. And when I'm not thinking about photography or writing about different things about the photography or the natural world, I love driving in circles on my tractor just for fun. And I'm also a speaker. I'll do about 20 different speaking events a year in various venues, mainly around Texas, some in other states, but mainly around Texas. And that's another kind of offshoot from what I used to do as a teacher. And so I do my fair share of that for different audiences, talking about different things. And That's a lot of fun as well. But probably my most important job, I'm a husband and father of two, and I'll brag a little bit. 2 days ago, September 11th, I know the date's kind of tarnished a little bit, but in September 11th, 1993, I married my wife, Christy, and we just celebrated 2 days ago our 30th wedding anniversary. And so we've got two children. We've got a daughter who just turned 23. Yesterday was her birthday, and then a son who is 19 years old. And so they're both in school and doing well. And so because of that last little thing, that really defines who I am more than anything. And so one of the things that kind of brings us around to this topic is I've said this a lot, and I say it a little bit tongue in cheek. The photography education industrial complex really goes out of their way to not make things simple. Because there's things are a lot of times made needlessly complicated, especially in photography. The terms, when you're learning photography, the terms are complicated enough. And, you've got these whole thing like an aperture that even though the number gets bigger, the hole in the lens, the aperture gets smaller. And I know that confuses a lot of beginning photographers. And it confused me in the beginning. And so when I was learning how to take pictures and was really kind of self-taught, because again, my degree is in agriculture, it's not in photography or photojournalism or anything like that. When I was learning photography, I just taught myself like I teach everything myself, is in small, easily digestible steps. And really more than anything is just to try to keep it simple. One of the things about photography that I tell everybody is it's no different than a Major League Baseball player hitting a baseball, or a basketball player shooting three-pointers. I mean, everybody can shoot it from the three-point line and make one every now and then, but can you do it consistently? If you swing a bat enough time, you can hit a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, but can you do it consistently? You can press the button on a camera enough times and get a good picture every now and then, but can you do it consistently? And to me, that's the biggest challenge people have, biggest challenge I had when it come to learning photography, is just being able to learn how to do it consistently. I remember the time when I could get good pictures every now and then, and I remember the picture I took, and it was on film. I was telling the guys before we started this webinar today, I've been a long-time customer of B&H Photo. I started trading with them. I started taking pictures when I was 16 or 17 years old. I'm 53 now. When I was 18, 19, 20 years old, I was buying film from B&H Photo because they had the best price on Fujichrome Sensio 100 speed film. So I'd call up and order 50 rolls at a time and have them sent to me. And one of the things that I tell a lot of people is that when I used to shoot film, I had to get it right each and every time because I couldn't afford to mess up. I mean, I'm a young photographer making a little bit of money at it, not making a lot of money. My main line of work is teaching. And so as in the mindset of a teacher and having the heart of a teacher, when I started teaching myself how to take pictures, I just had to keep things simple in my mind and come up with those simple shortcuts so I can make the whole process, and this is an important word when it comes to photography, make the whole process repeatable. I can get the same results over and over and over again. And the point I was going to make is I can remember the time when I took a picture literally 2 miles from where I sit today in my home office, 2 miles away from here. I had a coyote run in front of my camera. I knew how to set the aperture, knew how to set the shutter speed on manual. The ISO was set for me because you couldn't really change that in film. Autofocused. It was in a tricky exposure situation. Everything clicked for me just like that, and the game became easier. And I took the picture a couple of weeks later when I got the film developed and got it back in. That one picture of the coyote is the picture that I knew that when I took it, everything made sense to me. And that's when the point it became consistent. And so since then, my approach to photography really hasn't changed since it did 25 or 30 years ago when I finally made that one good picture when I knew I had the whole thing figured out. It's just keeping the same simple process in mind. If you look at shampoo directions, it says the same thing: wash, rinse, repeat. It's over and over and over again. You do the same thing for me, that's the same way with photography. If you can keep it simple in my mind and do the same thing over and over again, your results become predictable, they become consistent, you become a better photographer over time. So in that vein, those are going to be some of the things we'll talk about today. I'm going to introduce you to some things that I do all the time. I don't really call them hacks in my personal life, but I know the word hack is a big word that's used online a lot. So that's why I titled my presentation some simple photo hacks you can use to kind of elevate your game at photography and make them a lot better. Some have to do with equipment, some have to do with technique, but they'll all help you in one way or another if you'll take the time to really process what we're talking about and put them into practice. Again, I want to remind you, if there's any questions that you have about anything I'm saying, or any pictures I've taken, or where they were taken, or anything else, feel free to fill them in. Be happy to answer them as we go along. I always like having this possum hanging in a tree there, Derek. It's not every day you see a possum hanging in a tree. So I learned this hack by really teaching hundreds of people in workshops, not only in the field all over the world, but also I do a photo school here at my own house on my own property. I've got the event space and we do a photo school here. And one of the things that I do more often than not, especially because to me, when people learn photography, I kind of mirror how I learned it. You're in the beginning phase for quite a long time where you're learning things. Then you're kind of in the intermediate phase where you understand it and your skills level is increasing and you're getting more and more consistent each time. And then you kind of reach that expert level where you just know what you do and you can pick up any camera it is, that whether it's a Canon, Olympus, Nikon, Sony, whatever, any camera you pick up, you can make good pictures with it, even an iPhone. And so if you're in the beginning and intermediate phase, this thing right here, a lot of times people miss. And I can't tell you how many times it's been, maybe more than 100 times when people talk about when they look through the viewfinder, it just doesn't look right. And things are a little bit blurry, or they don't think their camera's autofocusing. And one thing I always do is check their diopter, because I don't know. I can't speak to Nikon. Well, I can speak to Nikon a little bit. I can't speak to Sony as much, but I know in Canon, a lot of their models, that diopter gets bumped really easy. And if it gets bumped off when you're looking through the viewfinder, even though your camera can achieve autofocus and it's going to be accurate autofocus, the image you're looking at still looks blurry. So one thing I always encourage people to do from the jump is check that diopter, make sure it's set to your eye. If you don't need any kind of corrective measures on it, set it right to the middle where it is in this picture, in this slide. If you do need it, like I wear reading glasses, so I'll make a little diopter adjustment on my camera and make note of where it is, so I can go back to it if it gets bumped again. It's like you get a brand new camera just by changing the diopter on there. So that's one of the simple hacks I would encourage you to do. That's going to make a world of difference on how you take pictures. By the way, one of the things we're going to do later on, I'm going to talk about a couple of different hacks. And if you'll bear with me, I'm going to switch over to Lightroom so I can show you the technique on how to do those. So there will be a little bit of switching back and forth in a minute. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to throw those out there as I go along. I always like to throw pictures in here. Most of these pictures I've taken, you're seeing in this presentation, were either taken right here around my house or pretty close to my house. There's a couple, like in the last ones there that are, the elk was in Colorado, the bear was in Alaska, but a lot of the wildlife, one of the simple pleasures I have in life is taking care of my land and finding good opportunities here close. And that's kind of an offshoot from when I was a young photographer, that I didn't have the money or the time to travel everywhere. And so I had to find local opportunities. And really, as I think back about it, this is the simplest hack in the world. People ask me all the time, what kind of equipment can I get? Or what's that one technique that'll help elevate my skill level? And it's as simple as learning how to hit a golf ball. It takes repetition and practice and practice and practice. You've got it, even though the technology is great and the tools will help us, it can't replace just being in the field and just understanding your equipment, and just practicing the technique over and over and over again. One of the things, and I'll talk about later on in these hacks, and a lot of these things I'll talk about are pretty simple. They're not necessarily groundbreaking. Some of you guys that are listening in may have thought of these before, but maybe you haven't thought of them yet, and so that's why I want to introduce them to you. But one of the cool things about digital photography that wasn't very cool about film. In film photography, I just never experimented, but in digital photography, I can. And one of the things that I've recognized it's a resource on my own property. And the picture on the left here are fireflies. Every June, we get an abundance of fireflies here on Hackberry Farm. And it's just fun to go out and try to figure out how to take pictures of those and take pictures in a way that conveys not only the beauty of the animal, but also I love it when people see a picture like that and they say that, they haven't seen a firefly since they were really young. And so that when you can take pictures that help people have an emotional reaction, you're really doing something. And again, it goes back to consistency as well. Linda just sent in a question. So, or I got a couple of questions here. I'll ask as soon as I get done talking to these. And then the wood duck that's on my own property here. And a lot of people, this is becoming a more and more internationally popular place. The picture on the lower right, that's Caddo Lake. It's a natural lake that straddles the border. It's a couple hours from where I live that straddles the border between Texas and Louisiana. And it's becoming kind of world renowned for its fall colors because of all the cypress trees there. And John asked me, this question's coming in from Vimeo. John asked, what lens are you using? Well, and I'll tell you in general, John, if you mean any one specific picture, let me know which one you're talking about, and I'll tell you on that one. But in general, my lens selection is kind of a 3-lens setup that I travel with all the time. I've got a 16 to 35 or 4-lens setup actually. I've got a 16 to 35 millimeter zoom that I use for the wide angle stuff, like the firefly picture you're looking at there was shot with a 16 millimeter lens. I've got a 24 to 105 zoom that's kind of I only got it about a year ago, and when I started using that lens, because I always thought it would be of limited use for me just in the way I shot, but I was wrong about that. And so once I got that lens, I use it all the time. So I've got a 16 to 35, a 24 to 105 zoom, a 70 to 200 zoom lens. And that 70 to 200 is a lens I bought it's a Canon lens. It's their version 1 lens that they make. I bought that thing maybe 25 years ago. It's an old lens, but it still works good. It looks like it's been ran over by a truck a few times because all the paint's chipping off of it, and it looks pretty worn, but it still works good. And that picture of the cypress trees in the lower right with the sun coming up, I shot that one with that 70 to 200. Here's a photo hack I don't talk about because this is a thing that's in another webinar that I do. But if you want to get, and with the eclipse coming up, the first eclipse of this year coming up in October, in the western part of the United States, if you're traveling that way or if you live that way, this is a good thing to know because you just don't hear this talked about anymore. But if you want to take a picture of the sun or the moon that looks a natural size in your images, you shoot them at 200 millimeters. I know, what was it, a couple of weeks ago when the super moon, full disclaimer, I hate to be cranky when I say this, I don't mean to be, but the super moon looked the same as a regular moon to me. I can't tell any difference, honestly. But anyway, when the super moon came up, you see a lot of pictures online where the moon looks gigantic as it's coming up. Well, they're shooting them with the telephoto. And since we see in 50 millimeters, if you shoot, and it's kind of counterintuitive, if you shoot the sun or the moon as it's rising with 50 millimeters, it looks like a little bitty dot in the sky. But to get a natural size sun or moon in the image as it's rising, like in the cypress picture, in the lower right, 200 millimeters. So that's why I carry that lens with me a lot. And then the wood duck in the upper right, John, I've got a Canon 500 millimeter f4 that I use religiously. That's another old lens. That's probably a 20-year-old lens I've had forever. It's a big and heavy, but it still works great, and it gets the kind of backgrounds I love. A lot of times, especially if it's a small animal like a bird, I'll throw a 1.4 converter on it. That'll really give me a little extra reach. But yeah, that's 16 to 35, 24 to 105, 70 to 200, 500 millimeter lens is kind of my range. And it's a big gap between 2 to 500, but I can also put in that 1.4 on the 200 and kind of bridge that gap a little bit. So that's sort of my in the field setup when I'm on the go is what I use. So I hope that answers your question. But if you have a John, if you're still listening, if you have a specific question about any particular picture, just let me know that as well. And then Linda asked, when setting the diopter, if you wear glasses, do you keep your glasses on when setting? This opinion may vary on this, Linda. I don't, because my glasses are kind of the diopter for me. Like, in other words, if I want to look at the back of my camera, I've got to put on my diopters to see the back of the camera clearly. But when I'm looking through the viewfinder, I don't wear my glasses. And so I take my glasses off and I set the diopter without my glasses on, where I can see the image inside the screen as well as the menu items inside the screen as clearly as possible. And so that's how I do it. Yeah, keep those questions coming. Those are great questions, by the way. And if I need to clarify any of that, just let me know. And thanks, Danny, on the back end for sending those questions through as they come. Here's another simple little hack you can do. You know, we hear a lot about when you print your own pictures at home about calibrating your monitor to your printer, but hardly ever anyone ever talks about, you can't calibrate them exactly, but calibrating your camera's display to your computer screen display. And I do that a lot. So I shoot Canon, so these are all on Canon cameras, but on every camera that's made, you can adjust the brightness of the LCD screen on back. And so typically what I'll do is I will bring my camera. When I get a new camera, I will set in my office with the lights like they are when I'm usually editing pictures. So my computer screen is calibrated as close as I can get it, so I know what the picture is going to look like. And then when I bring my camera in, I'll adjust the brightness to match as close as I can to my computer screen. And the reason I do that is, again, we talked a lot earlier about consistency and just getting into the process where the process, each time you press the button, it's consistent. I love it when I see people that take pictures and they don't feel like they've got to look at every picture to see if they've got it right, because they know, because based on experience and their skill level, they know they're getting it right. And so that all comes with consistency. But one of the things that'll help you get consistent is calibrate your camera's display. And again, when you're in the field and you're taking pictures, if I take a picture of a possum hanging in a tree, for example, and I'll look at it in the field on the back of my camera, or if I look at it in the shade in my pickup truck, I'll know within a pretty close margin of that picture I'm seeing on the back of my camera will look pretty much like it will inside when I get it in the computer, just because I've taken the time to calibrate that brightness. And you can't assume they're all right when they come out of the box. I know I had a camera a few years ago, and I took it out in the field. And this is one of the things that really forced me to start doing this each and every time. I had a Canon 5D Mark II that out of the box, took it out, started taking pictures. And then every picture I took that was really bright, I thought there was something wrong with the camera, or I thought there was something wrong with me, that I'd forgotten what I was doing. But every time I take a picture, I look at it on the screen, it just looked bright. It didn't look good. And so when I started digging through when it finally took me a while to figure it out, when I finally started digging through the menus, I just figured out that the brightness, even though it showed to be the middle, the out of the box brightness of the screen was off a little bit. Now, I guess I could have sent it back to Canon and got it fixed. But when you live in rural Texas, that's easier said than done, because it's not like we've got a UPS store around the corner. And so we got to go into town and all that. So what I did is took it into the computer, or took it into my office, sat down with my computer, adjusted the brightness of the screen to as close as I could, matched the computer, and then I still use that camera today. So I went to town with it after that. So that's a good hack to do as well. And just make sure, and if you've got multiple cameras, and if you make sure every one of them have the same brightness to match your computer screen, it just makes that whole consistency process when you're in the field a lot easier. And once that consistency level starts to go up, then those lessons that you start to teach yourself about photography by doing photography, they start clicking a lot quicker, because you're not trying to figure out, why is this picture bright? Why is this picture dark? If you've got that part taken care of, it's pretty easy to figure out what you may be doing right or doing wrong. This was 100 yards from my house. This was about a month ago. I took this shot. I call this I'm not a big astrophotographer, but when you've got a great North Star in your front yard, or North Sky in your front yard, it makes it pretty easy to, I shouldn't admit to this, but I'll set my cameras out and then use the intervalometer. And this goes to another part that I'll kind of wrap this whole talk up with. One of the simplest hacks you can do. When you use the intervalometer in the camera and you can tell it the duration in which to take pictures, I'll go set the cameras out as soon as it gets dark, and then I'll go to bed and then wake up early in the morning to go pick the cameras up about sunrise. But I call this this is the trifecta of the light we get out here in the country. We've got starlight in the skies. The bell was lit by moonlight because you can see a little bit of shadow across that bell, that hay bell that came off our place. The moon was setting behind the trees over to the west, and so it only illuminated the whole bell, but only the top half pretty good. And all these green little specks you see there were the fireflies that were out in the field. So that was I call that the trifecta of being able to get all three of those in one shot. And I was pretty proud when I took that picture. And so I'm still proud. That's why I wanted to include it in this. And even though I've taken millions of pictures, I still get excited every time I press the button, and the promise that just that little click holds, and what you may get on the other side of it. It's always never gets old to me. Here's one of the things I'm going to teach you how to do in a minute on post-processing. I may go ahead and switch over to it right now. If you ever find yourself, and we all do when you're out in the field and you've got terrible light. So like today, if it's overcast outside, and if I've got a bird sitting in a tree like this cormorant here is, if I try to take a picture of the bird, it's not, there's nothing you can do. I ascribe to the Kenny Rogers rule of photography. You got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them, because sometimes no matter how hard you try, or maybe my post-processing skills aren't that good, no matter how good your post-processing skills are, sometimes there's some conditions, particularly when it comes to nature photography, that no matter what you do, you can't take a good picture. And so a typical example of that is if you've got birds or animals in a tree or against the sky, and the sky is just overcast, or you can also do it in the middle of the day when the sun's right overhead as well. And so I always try to make a silhouette. And if you'll bear with me, what I mean by that is, I hope y'all can see this screen here. I think you can. This is this is the picture of what it looked like just right out of the camera. As you can see here, if I go to the develop module in Lightroom, if I scroll to the bottom and I look over here on the left side at my history, there's the import right there, how it came into the camera. So that's how I took it. And so recognizing that the lighting was going to be terrible, it was a dark bird against a bright sky, the lighting was going to be terrible. What I did was I thought, I'll just make a silhouette. By the way, this picture was shot at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And so the way you make a silhouette is really, really, really simple, is how I do it. So one, I purposefully underexpose. So I try to expose for the sky and not the bird itself. I mean, you can go high key, expose for the bird, but the sky is going to be really blown out. But I expose for the sky. You can see in my histogram in the upper right how it's all kind of peaking at the middle. And then after that, it's just a couple of moving some sliders around. I'll move my blacks to the left to make sure everything that's black is going to be black. And then I move my shadows to the left to try to get rid of all those. And each picture's different, so you got to kind of do it by feel. And then after that, here's where the magic comes in. I change my white balance. And so if I could go kind of on the blue side and make that look like a blue hour photograph, or I could go to the right and warm it up a little bit, and then I can make that look like a sunrise or sunset silhouette. And so by making a silhouette when you've got really your options are limited, it's like in the middle of the day or overcast days, that's a great way of doing it. I'll tell you a scenario that happened a couple of years ago. It was in October. I was in Yellowstone National Park teaching a workshop. And right when we rolled in through Gardner at the Roosevelt Gate, there was a big bull elk on a ridge, and it was an overcast day. The big bull elk was on a ridge, and he was bugling and trying to round up his harem, but he stayed on that ridge forever. And while he was there, I heard some people in the group say, "Oh, you can't get a good picture there." And I'm like, "No, you can. Take it, underexpose it a little bit, then change the white balance in post-processing, and you can make a silhouette." And one of those pictures I took from that instance when we saw that bull elk on the ridge ended up being a magazine cover. So you can salvage pictures like that. And as I showed you, with just a few sliders and making just a couple of simple changes, the main one of which being the white balance, it's crazy what you can do. And that's where post-processing really comes in handy. So let me switch back over to Keynote. There we go. So yeah, that, if you remember the picture I just post-processed, this is in the same group as that other one. And so again, if you got terrible light, it's an easy hack to remember. One of the things that I would encourage you to do, and I encourage people to do all the time, when you've done it a lot, it becomes muscle memory over time. You know, I equate, I'm not a big golfer. Golfer was in one of my list of things I like to do, but it recently dropped off when my 19-year-old son beat me at golf all the time. I dropped it off my list of potential hobbies. But one of the things about golf that I never could develop was muscle memory. Just holding the club and making the swing the right way till you could be consistent. But with photography, it's kind of the same way when you're beginning. It's easy to forget these things that we're talking about. One of the things that I encourage people to do all the time is we all carry a little computer in our pocket. And so I make notes on my smartphone. I may make notes on, like when I did the star trail picture that you saw, right there. I'm not an expert at doing that. So I made notes on my phone before I went out to kind of guide me through the process. So when I went back the next morning, I had something I could work with. Same way with doing, if you're how to deal with terrible light, put the notes in your phone. And so that way, when you're in the field and we've all got that downtime when you're in the field, when you're out there in the field, just check back on your notes and then just kind of follow the recipe book, as I call it, and will help you remember to do these things. And after a while, once you remember to do them, it just becomes muscle memory. Like now, I don't have to remind myself how to deal with terrible light when I'm out in the field and I have an opportunity come up that I think will be an intriguing picture. I just know what to do. And again, underexpose a little bit, expose for the sky, not for the bird or the animal, change the white balance in post-processing. And it's amazing how you can do this. And there's another thing that it seems simple to me, but I don't find myself using it enough. And then I hardly ever see anybody else using it, but the cameras, all these cameras now have articulating screens and they're great. And I should have expanded this, not only for low angles, but also for high angles. You know, we're used to seeing the world from however tall you are or however tall your eyeballs are. That's how you're used to seeing the world. And I don't know how many people that are listening today have seen this before, but you go into a national park and you may have like Yellowstone, since I mentioned it, you have a bear out there in the field and there will be 90 photographers lined up alongside the road and every one of them are standing up doing the exact same thing. And so I come from the old school belief that if everybody's thinking the same, somebody's not thinking. And so what I encourage all of my students to do is find a different angle. No matter if it's just a mundane shot, find a different angle and see what you can do. And these articulating screens make it so easy now. Hey, let's face it, none of us are getting any younger. And so it's harder and harder to get up off the ground for some people because knees start getting bad and backs start getting bad over time. But those articulating screens make it so easy to flip the LCD up and set a camera on the ground and be able to compose just by looking at your screen on the back of the camera. It wasn't too long ago to accomplish a picture like this, you had to buy a whole different attachment for your camera called a right angle finder, had to hook it to the eyepiece, and then you had to lay on the ground and then look through the eyepiece like it's a periscope to be able to compose pictures like this. And so now it's pretty easy. A lot of times what I'll do, even especially when you're shooting at a high angle, I will turn my LCD screen down and I'll put the camera on a monopod or a tripod, and it's not drone height. You're not getting it 20 or 30 feet off the ground, but you are getting the shot where it's 8-10 feet off the ground. Just a little different perspective than what you would see if you're just standing on the ground looking through the same way you see the world the rest of the time. So use that articulating screen, again, not only for low angles, but also for high angles. This particular shot here, this is one of those lessons you learn with experience is the sun's right overhead. What do you do to make a compelling picture? I love plants. I've been a fan of plants my whole adult life. I love seeing new plants and identifying them. And so this is a plant that's called May apple. I should say it's a southern plant. I know it's in Texas, and I know this is in the Smoky Mountain National Park where I did this shot. I don't know how far north it goes, I should say, but it's got a flower that kind of dangles on the underside of it and a fruit that dangles on the other side of it. And when you're walking past it, you can't see the fruit or the flowers. And so, and it's a pretty short plant. It only grows maybe about a foot tall, but it grows in a clump. And so when you find some, you'll find a little grove of these plants, these low growing plants, but they only last for maybe a month in the spring every year. But they're so beautiful when they're translucent. You can see the structures of the leaves. If you shoot that thing from an angle and let the sun shine through, then it kind of gives you a more interesting shot. And you just do that by just getting low. And there's another thing too that's kind of photography 101, but sometimes people forget about this. And this is a really good hack. If you're shooting on, oops, let me go back. Hit the button too many times. If you're shooting on overcast days, avoid the sky. If I was to go outside right now and start shooting pictures, I do everything I can to not include the sky in the picture, because the sky is gray and it's the least interesting part of the scene right now. And so what it does is, if you include a lot of sky in a picture, it just sucks the color out of an image. I love shooting on overcast days though. I mean, my perfect day of outdoor photography would be if I could have 2 hours of light in the morning, just good, clean sunlight, not adulterated by clouds at all, and have 2 good hours of sunlight in the evening as the sun goes down to get that nice golden light, both in the morning and evening, and the rest of the day be overcast. It'd be perfect, because on overcast days, if you shoot any portrait work at all, or if you had your portrait made, you'll know that flash photographers always use those big modifiers to modify the light. You hardly ever see anyone shooting a portrait, unless they're doing some experimental stuff, with just a straight flash in the bulb, because the light's too harsh. So they put an umbrella on, they put a big softbox on, and that softens the light. Well, the clouds are a gigantic softbox. And so when you avoid the sky in the picture on overcast days, like on this frog, again, I've got a wetland on my property, and this little tree frog was taken on the wetland. You do it by lining up your composition where you just don't have any sky in the picture, and you don't give the sky a chance to suck all the color out. And I'll go back to this one right here. If that, you saw the original, or the one that was the one I showed you on Lightroom, you saw the original of this, and the first picture I took, where it just sucks the color out of the subject. And so when you're shooting on overcast days, avoid the sky. And sometimes, and these are the things that make you a better photographer, because when you're forced to think differently and forced to move around and forced to see the world in a different kind of way, that's when you start discovering new compositions, and the light bulb begins to go off, the aha moment begins to go off. And when you get to that point in your learning curve, that's when things start becoming a lot more consistent in how you learn to be a better photographer. Look, I tell people a lot, it's not like, taking pictures is a learned process. None of us are born knowing how to do it. Now, I will say some of us may be born a little more with an artistic gift than the others, but I didn't come from a family of photographers. My brother gave me a camera that he bought from a pawn shop when I was like 15 or 16 years old. And so I just learned by doing and loved the medium. And so as time went on, you start learning these lessons, like avoid the sky. This is in the Smoky Mountain National Park. And it's easy to think about, not including the sky in this composition, even though you can see some semblances of the sky in the top of the shot. The sky is pretty much hidden by those trees. And a lot of times I'll compose things like that, where you can see a little sliver of the sky, but it's not, the sky doesn't dominate the picture. And that's really the lesson here. If it's overcast, don't let the sky dominate the picture. Now, conversely, it kind of works in reverse. If you don't have any clouds in the sky, if it's a completely bluebird day and it's a blue sky day, it's a good thing too to not include any more sky than you have to. This is Schwabacher's Landing, Teton National Park. Same thing here. It'd be easy to compose this picture with a great big sky, but the sky was the least interesting part. And so I used the zoom on my lens, and the zoom that I have beneath my waist, called my 2 feet, to get me just a little bit closer to get the composition I wanted here. And again, to avoid as much sky as I could in this shot. And this is a big one too. And they're so super cheap, and no one ever carries one. And I learned this lesson when doing commercial work, I have to shoot a fair number of pictures of people kind of outdoors doing outdoorsy things. And so one thing you always carry on people shoots are reflectors. Well, you can buy these little 12 and 18-inch reflectors that work great and will carry really easy they'll fold up and carry easy into a backpack and carry them into the field with you, because it makes a huge difference, especially when you're trying to make something out of nothing. If you've got bad lighting and or the sun's overhead, you can also use it as a scrim to block the light off. And in the end, all you're trying to do is fill in shadows and make the light more consistent. And so the reflectors do a good job. And I've got flower pictures included here because they show up the easiest on this. It's kind of subtle when you look at it, but it adds just that little bit of punch of light, punch of color, and it really kind of transcends the way your pictures look in the field. I use these reflectors on everything, and I should have included one of these pictures in here. I use these reflectors on everything from flowers to any kind of macro subject, really. Flowers or insects when I can, or reptiles. It works really good on those. Almost every reptile shot I've shot over the past couple of years, whether it's a snake or a turtle or some kind of lizard, I've almost always used a reflector to just bounce a little bit of light back in. I'll make the light more consistent and make those colors really, really pop. Now, I will say with one caveat here, and I don't know how I feel about this yet, because that may be a whole other webinar on its own, but one of the things I've always coached over the past 3 or 4 years is when you're shooting pictures of birds in flight, as soon as the bird flies to the sky, as soon as the bird clears the area you just shot, take a picture of that blank sky where the bird just flew through. Now, we've all know about sky replacement in Photoshop, but I can tell you, whenever I see a sky replacement done on a bird or anything else, I can always tell. And the reason why, and again, this is subtle, and this is the things that we pick up on, because the angle of light in a sky replacement picture doesn't match the angle of light in the subject where the sky is being replaced. And so what I'm talking about here is, if you shoot a picture of an empty sky where you're just shooting a picture of that bird, then you use that sky as your replacement. And I'll show you a technique I use here in a minute. And the one thing I was alluded to that I'm not sure what I think about it just yet, AI is quickly negating a lot of what I'm talking about here, because I know in the new Photoshop beta version, I think it's 2024 version, the beta version, where they have that generative feel where you can expand a picture. That may kind of change these a little bit. But for now, I'm still coaching people to shoot a picture of the empty sky. And let me switch over and I'll show you exactly what let me show you this picture here before I switch over. So this is a series of bald eagles pictures right as they came out of Lightroom. So you can see the bald eagle. I shot a few pictures of it flying through. And then once it flew through, I just shot a picture of the blank sky that it just flew through. That's all I'm doing. And because the reason is, the light is still the same on those clouds, and everything else in the background is what it was on the bird that just flew through. And so when you do this sky replacement, it makes it match a whole lot easier. And so if you've ever shot pictures of birds in flight before, you know it's kind of a war of attrition. You shoot lots and lots and lots of pictures and know you're going to get lots of pictures that aren't good, excuse me, or the composition's bad. And you can see in my set right here, I've got several where the bird's right at the edge of the frame and the composition's just not great. And so let me switch the screen over back to Lightroom, and I've got a couple that I put in my, got to move all my zoom windows over to see what I'm doing. I got a couple I put in my quick collection here. So there's a bald eagle there. Oops. Sorry about that. There's a bald eagle there I shot a picture of. My mouse is sensitive. There's a bald eagle there I shot a picture of, and then there's the sky that it just flew through. Now the bald eagle, to me, it checks most of the boxes that I would pick. It's got it's sharp. It's got a good wing angle. It's a relatively good picture, but the one thing that is not good is it doesn't have good composition. So again, back to the caveat is the AI stuff is changing all this a little bit. I'm Again, not sure how I feel about it, but the fact it is changing everything. So I can select both those images that I've got right there. I can select the bird image and the sky image, and then I can choose to edit in Adobe Photoshop. So we'll give that a second and it'll open in Photoshop. I wasn't thinking ahead, or I should have went ahead and had these open already. It have made this spot go a little bit quicker, but it won't take long. Essentially what we're going to do while we're waiting that to open, I'm going to show you a quick little trick to erase one sky, put the bird in the other sky, and then to be able to recompose your picture in a more pleasing kind of manner. So if I go back to my slideshow here while we're still waiting on that to open, you can see in this picture here that 982, that original picture was, I think it was 979 and 983 combined to make 982. So that's just simple sky replacement. And we're still waiting on that thing to open. So give me just a second and I'll show you how to do that. And again, if you have any questions about anything, or if I'm going too fast on some of these techniques, feel free to let me know all that. If I need to make any clarifications on anything. Well, I'll tell you what, while I'm waiting on that to load, I'm going to go ahead and move forward. We'll go back to this one. I'll show you this demonstration right at the very end while we're waiting on that to load, because I don't want this to bog down too long. It won't take too much longer. Oh, I think it's loading right now. Let me try that one more time. So, and you do this from Lightroom, because when you open into Photoshop and then you save that image, it'll save it back into Lightroom for you, so you don't have to go hunting where the picture is. Well, as you would know, whenever you try to do something with the electronics, nothing ever works out exactly like you want it to. So I'll go back to that in a minute. I'll go ahead and move on here. I'll show you how to do that, but it works pretty good. So really the underlying theme on a lot of these pictures I was showing you, whether it's the technique I was trying to show you just now, or whether it's the doing the star trails or the fireflies or everything else, always experiment. That's the best hack you can think of. Don't be afraid to experiment. It's literally like you're playing slot machines with the casino's money when it comes to shooting digital pictures. It may take you a little extra time to kind of wind through the pictures and figure out what you did right and did wrong. But the beautiful thing about all digital photography is every picture you take has the recipes written right in the metadata. So it makes it really easy to learn and go back through that stuff, through your pictures, and figure out what you did right and what you did wrong. And again, that's the skill set you got to build on building consistency. Is you got to get to the point where not only do you understand what you're doing right, but you also understand what you're doing wrong. And believe me, I still do plenty wrong. I mean, a lot of these pictures I showed you in this presentation, and I'll go back a little bit, and just a lot of these things. The fireflies there, they were, I didn't inherently know how to shoot pictures of fireflies, but through trial and error, I figured it out, and it was pretty easy to figure out once you do it once and figure it out, and you've got the recipe written down and kept in your notes, you can go back and replicate it. I've spent a lifetime living in rural areas and staring at the stars every night, but I've never, not since film, have I ever tried to do a star trail before. But I figured out the recipe. I took the picture, went out one night, set my camera up, and the serendipity of this whole shot was not only did we get the fireflies, but this was a happy accident. I love how the pattern of the stars is repeated in the pattern of the hay bale right in front of that. It's just kind of funny how Mother Nature gives us those little gifts from time to time. And then making a silhouette is experimenting. All these things, it all comes down to experiment, understand what works, what doesn't, and then go from there. And I think I'm going to try this one more time. I've filibustered enough. If it doesn't work this time, we may need to move on, and I may have to do for some reason, it's not opening everything up in Lightroom. I mean, I could sit here and take another 20 minutes for it to do that, but that wouldn't be worth anyone's time to sit there and watch me fiddle with why my computer all of a sudden or Photoshop isn't working. I know Photoshop just did an update a day or two ago, so that may have something to do with it. So I don't know. Anyway, always experiment. If you, this is another experiment I did here. Same hay bale, different night. This is the Person meteor shower. I've seen the Persons. in most of the 53 years of my life, we've all seen shooting stars and meteorites flying to the sky. And so I decided one night, I want to experiment. I want to try to get some good pictures of the Perseid meteor shower. How do you do that? Well, you go out and you figure it out and not be afraid to fail. One of the things that, and it shocks me a lot, that adults are, especially when it comes to photography, they're afraid of messing up. Well, I always remind them and remind myself, since I'd mentioned my children earlier, if I'd have been as hard on myself, if I'd have been hard on my children as what I was as hard on myself, or other adults are hard on themselves about learning photography, they never would have learned how to walk. But the thing is, you just take baby steps, you learn from your mistakes, and you just keep things moving forward over and over again, and just always experiment. And then once you do, when you're all up on a scene like this, it's high contrast between the mountains and the light and the sky and everything else. You just instantly know how to handle that. And then that's when photography becomes fun, because then what you're seeing is coming true to life in your vision, and you can make it work, and then be able to show off all your adventures to everyone else. If I think I got these out of, yeah, I do. Those are out of sequence. So it's 2:53 Texas time. I think we allotted an hour for this. I think that's right. Derek, if anybody has any questions, feel free to chime in there. I want to share a couple more things with you before we go. And Derek, sorry for the swing and the miss on the old Photoshop. I don't understand why it's not working, but
no worries.
But it's a pretty simple technique, and I think most people can figure it out if they understand Photoshop at all. But the key thing on that is take a picture of the blank sky. When you do your sky replacement, it looks a whole lot more realistic than it does if you try to use the built-in library of Photoshop pictures that they include on the sky replacement.
No, that's a great tip, Russ. And we know how to contact you if anybody does have any questions on that. And we might just have to get you back here for a post-processing.
Yeah, so here's the contact information. One of the things about me, Derek, is you're looking at the only member of the Dodge City, Texas Camera Club right here. It's me. So
it's not hard to find you then.
There are no other photo enthusiasts around here. So I encourage people, if you have a question or comment for me, there's my email address. Feel free to reach out, russell@russellgraves.com. Sometimes it may take me a few days to get back to you, because you never know where I'll be, but I always answer questions and always encourage people to stay in touch. I mean, I'm gonna get a little sappy here, but I feel like I was given a gift a long time ago, not only with photography and a love of nature and the outdoors, but also a little bit of gift of just how to share that and teach it. And so I love sharing that stuff with people. If you want to keep the conversation going, I'll just share this with you. If you go to wildlifephotoshow.com, that's where all my YouTube videos kind of have their home. I do a monthly newsletter that talks about my upcoming workshops. I do a series of free webinars myself. That every month I'll do a webinar myself that you can stay in on, and let's just keep the conversation going. So feel free, anybody out there listening, just to feel free to stay in touch. And Sherry, appreciate that comment. Sherry said I inspired her, so I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, it's always great to build the community out, and I think that's something that we need more of in the photography community. It's become so geared towards likes and follows and accolades and awards and contests, and I feel like we could use more. Hey, let me tell you what I know. Less gatekeeping. Let's get everybody better. It only makes for more engaging images when we're all kind of, we love doing critiques here on the event space, and I think one of the best things to come out of the critiques is that I'm learning from them. I'm doing critiques, but I'm learning from looking at other people's images and saying, hey, well, I wouldn't have looked at it that way, or I never would have thought to do this, but in seeing you do it and seeing you successful with it, now I'm going to expand my vision.
Well, and the truth is, none of us are solving world hunger by pressing a button on a camera when you're taking a picture of a deer. I mean, it's all supposed to be fun, and we're supposed to share with one another. So I like the way you're thinking, Derek.
Definitely. Well, we have a question that slipped in from Linda joining us on Vimeo. What do you consider a good composition for the sky and bird photo?
It's pretty well, I'm going to go back. I guess you can still see my screen, can't you?
Yeah. Yep.
Let me go back to one. A good composition would be, well, so this is not the typical 4/3 composition like you'd see a full frame, but this would this picture of this pelican, because that was a sky replacement. The original picture of that bird, the bird was almost about to fly out of the right side of the screen. And so what I did is replace the sky behind it. And if you think about the rule of thirds, that's kind of one of those universal rules that almost everyone understands. If you think about the rule of thirds, or if you've got your screen there and you break it up into like a tic-tac-toe grid, anywhere that the bird is, I mean, anywhere where the two lines intersect is kind of where, is a good guideline on where to place the subject. And so really for this picture, if you can draw an imaginary tic-tac-toe grid on this picture right here, first thing I did is I moved it to the right side of the picture, because you always want to give the animal a little bit of room to move into. So it doesn't need as much room behind it as what it needs, more room in front of it, because that'll kind of make it look more balanced and make it look more compositionally pleasing. And then from there, it's just picking a spot, kind of, do you want to frame it at the top or bottom? A lot of it's by feel, but as a general rule, a well-composed bird photo, if I can distill it down to one thing, it's going to have more sky for the bird to fly into and less sky that is flying out of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And I think that's something a lot of us struggle with. I know I can't tell you how many times I've taken photos of a bird and I can't tell how it looks best. And what do I end up doing? It stays in the photo graveyard on a hard drive because I can't make my mind up on it.
Yeah. So and that sky replacement again, I mean, you if we go back to these pictures here of the eagles, I mean, you can see these there. I mean, oops, I always get too crazy on my buttons. You can see there just that little snippet of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to say 7 because 982 doesn't count. 984 doesn't count. So 6 pictures there are all kind of swings and misses from a compositional standpoint. And so who was it? Linda that asked the question? I can't remember her name. But anyway,
yes. Linda was asking about the composition.
If you look at 980, if you can see that well, if you look at image number 980 there, you can see the eagle's about to fly out of the frame. And so by replacing the eagle on a brand new sky, again, the sky, I don't think it's cheating because it's the sky the eagle literally just flew through. By placing it on the new screen and then moving it around, you can see 982. That's the composite image between 980 and 983.
Interesting. Yeah, there's a huge difference there. And
just gave a little more room for it to fly. So to me, from my sensibilities, that makes it a better composed image from classical composition standards that we all sort of learned from in the beginning.
Yeah, definitely. It's like it gives you anxiety looking at 980 where it's like, okay, it's right at the edge. You almost missed it.
Oh, it does. Yeah. And so, but before I figured this technique out, and again, AI is changing a lot of that. I mean, it's easy now just to expand. I could take now at 980 and expand the borders of it, and AI will fill it in. It's pretty seamless. It's not perfect yet, and so that's the caveat too. But it does a pretty good job. But yeah. I mean, used to I'd get to a 980 and oops, I always do that. I used to get to an image 980 in the past and think, oh, that thing is poorly composed, delete it, get rid of it. Well, now 982, all of a sudden, I think like a magazine photographer. I think one day that may be used as a double page spread in a magazine where they're doing a story about bald eagles. And then so everything on the right hand side that's just blue sky will be filled with text.
Yeah.
So I took something that was I would have thrown away at one point and then made it into something that's valuable in my library.
Yeah, and that's a great point, is repurposing images. Now, back on that eagle image, Leanne joining us on Vimeo is asking if you can share the settings that you used when you took the photos of the eagle and if those differ from the settings for the pelican.
Well, I'd have to go back into, give me a second. I can tell you in general, Leanne.
Yeah, if there's a general rule of thumb or settings wise that you have, Russ.
So I may lose all of my credentials as a professional photographer with what I'm about to say, but I feel like I know everybody so good now. I can share this with everybody.
Your family, we won't throw you out.
I shoot, and I can prove this with math. I shoot 85% of the pictures I take on aperture priority.
I love it.
I know there's some who say, "Oh, if you're not shooting manual, you're not serious about it." Well, I don't shoot manual, and I am serious about it. And so Leanne, usually what I do is I'll start with aperture priority. My sweet spot, even now with the mirrorless cameras that do so much better at higher ISOs, my sweet spot is still usually 400 to 800 ISO that I'll shoot at. So I can tell you it's aperture priority, 400 to 800 ISO. Typically birds in flight, I don't really care what the background looks like or how out of focus the background is. So whatever lens I'm using, I will open it as wide open as I can. If I'm using that 500 millimeter f4, or if you're using, like, I think I know a popular lens is a 150 to 600, like that Tamron or Tokina or Sigma makes, which are great lenses. They're like f6.3 on the long end. So I'll set my ISO at 800 aperture priority. I'll set my aperture the widest I can get that lens to open. In this case, if you're using that 150 to 600, would be 6.3. And then the camera's doing the heavy lifting for me on the shutter speed. The camera's just setting the shutter speed with whatever it needs to be. Now, if I find out that it's too slow a shutter speed, I can always raise my ISO up to compensate for that. So it's just that pretty simple approach, like I talked about in the beginning, that when I think about these things, I still think about aperture, shutter speed, ISO in pretty simplistic terms, because if I don't, that's when I miss stuff. I mean, if my goal is, when I see something happen, and it happens fast in nature, I want to have the fewest barriers between me and getting that picture as I can. And part of that is if I let the camera set the shutter speed by using aperture priority, that's one less dial I have to turn, or in my case, a lot of times misturn, because we've all done that before. Things start happening quick and you turn the dial the wrong way.
You're the wrong direction. Yep.
Wrong direction. We all make that mistake. And so that's my pretty simplistic approach. I'll say it one more time, Leanne. Aperture priority, ISO usually start out at 800 on birds in flight. Open my aperture as wide as I can get it, and then the camera decides what the shutter speed ought to be. So I'm guessing this light right here, and this is another thing you can approximate. If I shot that at 800 ISO, I'm guessing the shutter speed on that, the aperture I know was probably f4, f5.6 if I was using a teleconverter. The shutter speed on that was probably around 1/4000th of a second, somewhere along in that, which is plenty fast enough to handhold.
Perfect. And we're going to mention it because Teresa brought it up. Teresa joining us on Vimeo, asking if you're going to offer the Nature Photography Academy next year.
I am going to offer that. In fact, I am working on a brand new website right now to rebrand everything. The wildlifephotoShow.com that you see today will not exist, hopefully, in a couple of weeks. It's going to all be upgraded and rebranded, and that's where the new information on the Nature Photography Academy will be held. And for Derek, just to let you know, the Nature Photography Academy is where I take a cohort of people, 6 people max, and we do all of our learning out of Hackberry Farm. I've got the event space we do it at, and we take a different topic involved in nature photography once a month, and we cover that in depth for a whole day, that one particular topic. And then in between time, we reinforce with image reviews and more kind of Zoom meetings. I won't lie to you, it's kind of made for people sort of within driving distance from here. It doesn't make sense for someone, unless you've got the means to do it. It doesn't make sense that someone would fly in once a month for a single day from another state. But we've got a lot of photography enthusiasts, particularly in Texas, that we filled it up this year. That's winding down to an end right now, and the first year of it. And so, yeah, next March, Teresa, we'll start the next cohort of the Nature Photography Academy.
Awesome. It sounds like a wonderful initiative. And, I love seeing that. Again, it's all about community, getting people together. And there's a lot of people who are using photography for a lot of different things, and not just, sustenance and making their careers out of it. But there's a lot of hobbyists. There's a lot of amateurs that really keep the wheels turning. It's something that gives purpose to life. At the very least, you're documenting your life. And I think that's awesome what you're doing, Russ, and getting people together and helping people become better photographers. So whether it's regional or not, it's awesome.
And that's the thing. And you said it right there. It's and again, I tend to be a little melodramatic sometimes, but it's just, when I'm not taking pictures for a living, I take pictures for a hobby. I do it every single day. I get my camera out. I've got the luxury of having land I can roam around on and a lot of interesting stuff to see here. But I do it as a hobby because I realize, and another thing that this is where I don't think AI will ever replace. There's something about the experience of going out into nature and catching a moment in time that will never happen again. It's never happened. That 1/1000th of a second has never happened before, and it will never happen that way again. And there's something profound about doing that. And that's one thing that no matter how good these AI image generators get, you can't replace that human feeling of being able to go out and do that. And when you get it all right, when all those cosmic tumblers click into place like they did for me when I was in my 20s, and you finally understand it all, that's the moment it grabs you, and that's what keeps you going.
That's it. And I love hearing that. Your passion comes through the screen, Russ, and I love that about you, is that you believe this, right? You live this, and you see the power of that single moment and how often we click that shutter. It's more moments that we remember. So wow. I want to thank you, Russ. You're always invited back on here. And for anybody else who has any interest in what Russ has going on down there, of course, Russ, let's pop that the website up on the screen. We did drop it in the comment section, but keep an eye out on that. Russ said he is getting everything updated as well. So keep an eye out. If you guys do have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, so I've got a new, as soon as you go there, you can see where you can sign up for the newsletter if you want to. You'll get, I don't spam you. You get 1 or 2 emails a month from me at the most.
Awesome.
Letter and with that, I just want to say I always have to show the world's greatest dolphin picture. Thanks for everything. That's what I call it. It's not known as universal. But when I took that, I made a joke that to the people in the workshop with me that I just took the world's greatest dolphin picture. That's why I still call it that today.
I love it. It's a million times better than the only dolphin picture I have, which is not anywhere near this. Maybe I need to get down there to workshop one day.
Yeah,
Russ, man, thank you, man. I look, I want to make it down. I told you we just had Lee on recently, and this is 2 Texas photographers in 1 month. I think we're gonna have to start making it a thing. We'll have like Texas Tuesdays or something going on.
Us Texans are a lot smarter than what we look. So come on down.
You guys are great. You got the best vibes. The best vibes. We love having you guys on. Maybe we'll have to do a joint. We'll get you and Lee on. We'll just talk shop on here for an hour.
Yeah, anytime.
Awesome. Well, Russ, huge thank you to you again. We're going to close it out right here with the world's best dolphin picture. And Russell Graves, you guys have the information. Feel free to reach out, follow him. And that's it. That's all we got for today. Another rendition of the B&H virtual event space in the books.
Thank you. Take care.
Until next time. Thanks, Russ.